All right, welcome to TikTok Live. Have fun interacting with viewers in real time. Creators must be 18 and older to go live. Viewers must be 18 to charge and send gifts. Remember, create a safe viewing experience. Notifying viewers that you're live. Okay, I don't know what this means. Swipe to see real. What's that mean? This is my first time even doing any of this. Don't know what's going on, but I'm gonna go ahead and talk today. I just want to talk about unclean by contact. Um, and what do I mean by being unclean by contact? What I want to talk about is what Scripture teaches about touching the dead. Um, what does it mean when the Scriptures teach about touching the dead? In my mind, I've learned a lot about my life and life in general, just about what I experience and when I read the scriptures. And so I might see things that you might not see. I might have a viewpoint that you might not know anything about. But I'm willing to come on here and share my thoughts and see if my thoughts can help you or benefit you, or maybe you can share them with somebody else. And so this is my first live. So if I'm not doing this right, I don't know. I'm just speaking and I'm just talking. But today, we're going to be talking about unclean by contact. Sometimes you might feel unclean. Sometimes you might feel less than. You might have some experiences in your life that might make you feel some kind of way. Um, you might not feel powerful enough to accomplish certain things in life. You might have low self esteem. All these things might be something that that you might feel unclean, you might not feel holy, you might not feel complete as a person. But I believe that scripture provides us an answer for that because some of us feel this way but don't understand the origin. They don't really understand where this comes from. And so if a person feels unclean, it does have an origin. And maybe you might not have been told what that origin comes from. And what it really comes from is by what scripture talks about or teaches us about uh, when we touch a dead, when we about it's a, when they teach about touching the dead. And I think it's somewhere like in Leviticus. But when I say touching the dead, what am I talking about? I'm not necessarily talking about touching a dead person, like somebody is not living and you touching them, but in a spiritual sense. So I'm gonna define the dead. The dead is somebody who has a lack of wise and moral conduct. It's a lack of moral and wise conduct. And we have met plenty of people like this. Sometimes we're raised in a household where even our parents or the people raising us, they have a lack of wise and moral conduct. Their behaviors are different. And so when we're talking about somebody dead, we're talking about somebody who has a lack of maybe experience. They're not wise. They have a lack of understanding. They might be acting and doing things, in the world like people do, but they might not understand their actions. They might do things not understanding the actions. And the things that they're doing might not be wise or moral. It could be different. And when we're touching these people, it means that we come in contact with these people. That means that we have an experience with these people. And so when you're in a household like that, what are some things that you can experience that might cause you to feel unclean as a child or as an adult? And this can also happen even, after uh, you have grown up and you're in adulthood. And you might still come across some of these things. But these are certain things that might make you feel unclean. And let's just say it was a household and you was there as a child and you was there until you were 17, 16, anything like that. Uh, you could be feeling unclean that long and then leaving that house, going into the world, feeling a certain kind of way. And you don't know it because you have built a personality to be able to accept or be in an environment that makes you feel unclean, being in a body that makes you feel unclean. And so you might not even notice. You feel dirty, you feel incomplete, but again, you don't necessarily know the origin of it because you've been around the atmosphere or a family that has made you feel that way. And your family might not even know. Your family might not even have any idea or anything like that. And so let's talk about some things that we might experience that might make somebody feel unclean, right? Let's say alcoholism. Not every household. Some people experience this later on in life, but maybe our parent or somebody choosing alcohol over the family. They're abusing this alcohol. And that's not wise to do so. And it's not, it could be something that people might look at that's not morally acceptable when somebody is drinking and using alcohol and depending on alcohol more than they're depending on their family. And they're abusing alcohol. But that's just because they're making maybe not so good choices. They don't know it because they're probably masking some hurt or some pain that they experienced. But yet they did have a child, they did have you, and they're trying to take care of you even in their pain. They're doing the best that they know how. But that's how we can encounter the dead, encounter or have involvement or touching the dead. You can be feeling unclean because you was in an environment of somebody who abused alcohol, who chose alcohol over relationship, um, didn't want to, didn't know how to deal with their issues except for drinking, trying to mask those issues with drinking, not knowing that they was making you feel unwanted, abandoned, and with all this making you feel unclean. And so it's something that can happen. Some people experience it, some people don't. Even as an adult, if you're in a relationship and that person's drinking and that person's going out and they're choosing that relationship to go out and to drink and to be out there with other people other than you, you can feel abandoned. It can make you feel less than. It can make you feel unclean. And so, again, today's topic is about unclean by contact and what scripture teaches about touching the dead. And we can do this no matter what age we're at. We can have contact with these. And so I got a list of things like, let's say, drug abuse. So not only alcoholism, but drug abuse, selling, using, and exposing children to danger with drugs. Some people go through this. Um, it can be something that can make you feel unclean. As a child, you're experiencing it. You don't really understand it. You're going through it. You're feeling things that you don't know what to do with. There's nobody really explaining to you what's happening. And so you go into protective mode. You go into something to a protective manner to try to protect yourself, not knowing what's going on. And it can make you feel awkward, especially as a child if you don't have anybody to talk to it about. And let's just say you've been in this environment from childhood to 16, 17, 18, nobody to talk to. You have created this persona and you've been this person for so long. When you go out into the world, you don't know who that person is. You don't even know that you didn't change. You think that you're really this individual, but really this is a person that you have created in order to deal with the environment you was in. And so now you're going out into society thinking that you're somebody that you originally wasn't. You have been covered in dirt for so long, feeling unclean for so long that you're still bound by some of these things. And then when you get into relationships that remind you or trigger you about these certain things, now you're affecting that relationship, or that relationships get turns to be rocky because now they're experiencing this, you're experiencing it, you don't know what's going on, not knowing that you might be unclean. Let's say physical abuse, hitting, beating, violent punishment. When you've been in a physical abusive relationship, so not only alcoholism, drug abuse, but physical abuse affects the child. Even if you've seen it, let's say it wasn't necessarily you, but you've seen your parent going through it. You've seen other people, it happen to other people. You might be walking or you might be with a family and you're witnessing this as a child. It might make you feel a certain way. When we encounter things, things touch us. Things because we can feel it, even though it's happening away from us, but just of us being in that environment, we feel a certain thing. That's a touch. It touched you. And so, again, this is about being unclean by contact, by something touching you, and how scripture, which I'll be going over later, how scripture can help you deal with being unclean. It lets you know what has to happen in order for you to feel holy again, feel clean again, feel positive again. But what I'm trying to do is maybe expose things that might make you feel unclean and let you know that it does have an origin. If you feel this way, it's because you've been touched by something. Something came in contact with you and you experienced something that touched your soul. And so your soul is feeling a certain kind of way, but you don't know how to deal with it in your flesh. You don't know how to deal with it personally, mentally, because you have not been trained to deal with it. You've been trained to accept it. You have been trained to live in this dirty and filthy way of feeling about yourself, but really just don't know how and what to do. So let's say not only alcoholism, drug abuse, physical abuse, let's talk about emotional neglect. And all these things can make you feel like you've been abandoned. And that's kind of the thing that it does. It makes you feel abandoned. It makes you feel left out. So let's say emotional neglect, ignoring a child's feelings. As children, we feel a certain way. We want to express ourselves. But and you also have needs as a child. If those things are neglected, that's called emotional neglect. These things can also make a child feel unclean. And even in relationships, if you're in a relationship and somebody doesn't pay attention to you, they don't care about how you feel about something, they're ignoring things that are going on with you. And being in a household like that, you might not know how to express yourself to somebody. You might not know how to get that out because you've been living with it for so long. And so when you are living with this feeling, it can build up. But if you don't know how to deal with it, because think about it, I mean, we might feel unclean, but we won't love, right? We want to be loved by somebody. We want to be cherished by somebody. We want to, be in relationship with somebody. But because of your experience and because of what's going on, you might not know how to deal with it. You might not even know that there's a word that you can associate with it called being unclean. You're feeling unclean. You might take a bath every day, wash every day, but something just doesn't feel right with inside of you. And I've been there. And so, and again, scripture is what helped me deal with all this. But these are all things that can make us feel unclean. Let's say verbal aggression, right? Constant yelling, disregarding speech. Have you ever been in a household where there's a lot of yelling and confrontation going on? As a child, we can interpret that in some way. We can interpret that as something different. And again, it makes us feel unclean. But the Bible, the scriptures, they do say something about being unclean. And again, this is my first time being on live. I've never done this before. So if I'm not doing things right, please forgive me. Right now, I'm just talking. I don't know um, how to operate this thing. And maybe through time, if I keep doing this, I'll learn how to operate this thing. And so I do appreciate the people that are listening. Um, but verbal aggression, if you're around somebody who's yelling and using abusive language that's maybe, saying things that are negative towards you as a child or as an adult, and you don't know how to handle it, it can make you feel unclean. You don't know that you need to wash your soul, that you got to wash yourself and be clean again. And it's hard, and it could be hard to do because being in this environment, you can actually feel like this dirt is actually you, but it's not you. It's something that you're in, it's something that you're feeling, and it's making you feel and behave and act a certain way. Because if you're dirty, it's going to have you reacting as somebody who's dirty. You're not going to be acting as somebody who's positive. You're not going to be acting as somebody who feels positive about themselves. If you're unclean, you move unclean. You're triggered easily when you're unclean. Things irritate you a lot more when you feel unclean. And this can have an effect in your relationships. You might be wondering why you've been in and out of relationships, thinking there's something wrong, but you can't put a finger on it. And it could be because you feel unclean. And when you get into a relationship, that person doesn't know how to identify that in you. And I know that you need to be cleansed with words of love and affection. Because again, when you feel like that, you feel abandoned. Well, all you got to do is somebody has to notice that in you and do the opposite of abandonment. And whatever that is, there's a lot of words that are opposite from abandonment that will make you feel loved and make you feel cherished. And the first thing where that has to happen is within you on the inside. You have to love and cherish yourself and not neglect yourself. But sometimes when we feel unclean, we do neglect ourselves. And if we're not really taking care of ourselves, it's going to be hard to take care of others. It's going to be difficult. And so that's why the first transformation has to be within inside of ourselves. So we went over a couple of things already. We went over being in a household of alcoholism, drug abuse, physical abuse, emotional neglect, verbal aggression, sometimes sexual abuse. There's a lot of people who, men, male and female, who's been through that. And it's something that messes with the psyche, even at a young age. And it makes you feel unclean. It makes you choose and act and behave a certain way. You might be in a relationship and you might love that individual, but if they touch you a certain way, it makes your skin crawl. And you don't want to feel that way, but it's a reaction that you have built up because of things that you've been through. It triggers you, even though you don't want it to, because it's something you've been through. And you don't really know how to stop it because it just, again, people don't have people to talk to. People don't have people to share their thoughts with. And it can be difficult if you don't have nobody to speak these things about. The Bible talks about confession. Confession is big when you can confess what's been done to you, but our flesh makes us feel scary to confess. And that's how you know it's something that you need to do because your flesh will make you feel like you're going to be talked about. People are going to look at you different, but not knowing that people all around you are going through things. And if you just confess what's happened to you, one, you get it out. It might make you feel emotional. Some, some males, females don't want to feel vulnerable, but confession makes you feel vulnerable. And not even maybe confessing to somebody, but just really speaking out with you alone with your God within yourself, just speaking it, breaking down, crying, letting them tears cleanse your soul. Something that you got to do in order for you to break free from that filthiness. And sometimes just crying out to a God and letting them know that how abandoned you felt and letting them know what you went through. Sometimes we don't even say anything. We kind of keep it bottled up. domestic violence, um, hurting a spouse or a partner or children domestically. I mean, it makes us feel unclean. It makes us feel some kind of way. It makes us feel, it can again have something to do that changes your mindset. But scripture, that's the reason why I fell in love with the Bible, is because the things that I learned in scripture in the Bible helped me with my life. I didn't have a counselor to talk to. I didn't have, I mean, I had access to counselors, but, you know, I was just having a bad go around in life and I didn't know what to do. And so I started studying the only thing that I knew, and that was the Bible. And it just helped me out a lot. It really did. It helped me look at some things, and it put uh, a thing, I guess, where I could see deep down in my soul that the Bible was talking about that some people might take literal, but I take spiritual. Kind of like this thing with when the Bible teaches us about touching a dead person. It does talk about that, but a lot of people look at that physically. And when you look at it physically, you get a whole nother view. I look at it spiritually, so it kind of changes things about myself. But one thing it does teaches us is that we have to be cleansed. We have to be able to wash ourselves. But how do you do that? Well, you do that with your words in your mouth. You do that with your words in your thoughts. You got to find positive affirmations and positive things to speak about to cleanse your soul. And know that these things that happen, they happen to everybody. To a lot of people, you're not alone in any of this. You're not the only person that life has treated wrongly or people in life has, you know, you have come in contact with people who have a lack of moral and wise conduct. And that's what dead is. When we're talking about dead, we're not talking about a physically dead person. We're talking about somebody or someone that has a lack of wise and moral conduct. Their behavior is not wise. It's not moral. And again, we have all probably been a part of something like that, not knowing that being in contact with this can make us feel a certain kind of way and unclean. And also, we mimic a lot of things that we do. This can make us act and behave and have a lack of wise and moral conduct. We can also affect us. So even though you experience something unclean or you experience something dead that made you feel unclean, with you acting out something like that, you can make somebody else feel unclean. And also, they might feel dead and separated from God and not really have anything inside of them that makes them feel pure, holy, or good. Let's look at something else. Let's say a criminal lifestyle. Again, there's a lot of things that we can look at. Some people have a criminal lifestyle, or they've been in an environment where people around them had a criminal lifestyle. This can make you feel unclean. There's a lot of things in our environment that I'm trying to hit on because I know there's certain people and everybody experiences something different. So I'm just trying to point to a lot of different things that can make a person feel unclean. And again, when we feel unclean, we don't know that we have to be cleansed. And there's been organizations that try to do that by baptism. But if you don't know that you have to do this mentally, getting dipped in water is not going to solve the issue. You're going to be probably going to an organization where they probably put you in water and you come back up and you're thinking that done the job because they're doing the physical act of cleansing, but they're not really teaching you how to mentally cleanse yourself, how to do it up here, inside, inwardly, so that you can express it outside. And again, the only remedy that the Bible talks about when it talks about touching the dead is that you have to be cleansed. And I think this is like in either in Numbers or Leviticus where it talks about the laws in the Bible. And there's many ways. I can't really tell you how to cleanse yourself instead of just changing your thought process. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying none of this is easy because as soon as you start thinking positive, there's going to be something in you that's going to want you to think negative or bring up old things to make you feel a certain way. And it's a battle constantly until you get it down. Until you get it down where you can, you wake up in the morning. Me personally, I read scriptures in the morning. I try to, get my mind together, get my thoughts together. Then I get up and start my day, whether what that is, whether it's jogging or doing something like that. But again, everybody's grown up in different environments. And so I'm just trying to hit kind of all different environments. Let's say again, abandonment. All these things that I talked about make a person really at the end of the day feel abandoned. You have a hole somewhere missing inside of you that something goes, not knowing that 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 love um and all these things go here to try to fill that hole so you don't feel abandoned. But you try to find other things to do to fill that emptiness. But the reason why you feel that emptiness is because of the previous things I talked about making us feel unclean. It makes us feel incomplete, like there's something missing. And so we go out into the world trying to figure out what can we put in this empty spot to try to take care of it. And then when we try something to put in the empty spot, we're doing it knowing and we're coming to the knowledge that this ain't doing it. Even though I'm doing something, it's not really making me feel complete. It's not really making me feel whole. And so again, we're doing a lot of things trying to figure this thing out, not knowing that really it starts here. It starts off with you being alone with yourself, really getting to know who you are, being truthful about the experiences that happen to you, and going through the emotional process that God has created, built in you to go through so that you can actually cleanse yourself. A lot of times we think of these thoughts and we don't want to express it emotionally, and we don't want to cry, and we don't want to break down. And when we do that, we kind of harden our heart and harden ourselves. And so we can't really go through the process. And without going through the process, it's kind of hard to be and feel something different. Let's say favoritism. If you had a lot of siblings around, or if you're in a company or in a business, there might be some favoritism that might make you feel unclean. Well, why did that person get that and I did? Now you start looking at stuff, or why are they being treated this way and I'm getting treated this way, or that person's this way and I'm this way, and and you start thinking there's favoritism going on, and they might be playing it, you know, and because favoritism causes division, especially among siblings, and you might, you know, feel like everybody else is getting treated a certain way and you're getting treated this way, and again, it makes you feel abandoned, it makes you feel left out. And again, these things cause an uncleanness within our soul, which makes us behave and react a certain way. And again, let's just say you've been in this environment for 10, 15, 11, 12 years, um, and you had to create a mentality. And so basically, you created something in you to be able to deal with it, to mask it, and that created a whole nother person. So you're not really living in reality anymore. All your things that you're based on is like it's an illusion. You're living in an illusion of pain, and you're reacting a certain way, and you're looking at life differently because you're looking at them with pain glasses on, with abandonment glasses on, and those glasses are they're not clear. You can't, they're not 2020, and you're not looking at things differently. So any relationship you're in, any decisions that you're making them from a fearful standpoint or a being triggered standpoint, and because you haven't addressed and dealt with the things that cause the dirt to be upon you, financial irresponsibility, gambling, reckless spending that harms the family. A lot of times people don't know how to deal with money, and your life was affected because people didn't know how to deal with money. They had a gambling problem, or they spent money recklessly, and that had an effect on you. And it could, you know, and you might have even picked up some of those habits, and so now you're doing things and gambling with life and stuff, and doing certain things with your money, and just spending recklessly, and it's having an effect on your life because you've seen it. And again, these things can make us feel unclean, make us feel separated from God, make us not really feel like we have that closeness. Let's say chronic lying. People lie for manipulation. They're trying to manipulate you to do certain things, so they tell you certain stuff. It could be something about you with one parent and they're lying about another parent, so they can manipulate your mindset. It could be anything along those lines that somebody is trying to make you believe something that's not true, and they're lying to you, trying to manipulate you to think a certain way. And this can happen again in childhood and adulthood. There's people in your life that will try to manipulate the situation to make you feel something. And if you're not careful, it can make you feel unclean. It can make you feel a certain way. Um, it can make you feel like, uh, again, you're abandoned, that nobody's out there that really wants to be with you. You can feel left out. And again, these things make us crave certain things. Some we might crave love, and we might deal with all kind of different people who have a lack of moral conduct, a wise moral conduct, and wonder why we keep choosing these people. And it's because you really feel unclean on the inside. And sometimes these spiritual connections, they attract one another. You come in contact with one another. Let's say excessive control, right? Not allowing individuality. Somebody might be trying to have a extensive self-control over you to control everything about you. Parents do it. Sometimes they don't let children to be individuals, and there might be some kind of control, excessive control that might make you feel unclean. And again, I went through a lot of list of these things because, again, I don't know what people are dealing with. Some people might deal with some, none, or all these things. I don't really know, but I do know that experiencing these things can make a person feel less than if they're not careful. And really, when we come in contact with anybody, we have to kind of probably, you know, wash our mind, you know. And again, it's a lot of positive affirmation because one thing I do know, if you do feed your mind with negative information, your spirit is going to get angry and agitated. And I do know if you feed your spirit with positive information, your spirit react positively and things will change. And another thing is what we receive. Because sometimes we don't think negative, but do you receive the negative? Do you accept it? That's another thing that we don't know that we have a choice in. You have a choice, whether it's outside the body or inside the body, to accept anything that's said. Anything negative that comes through should be an automatic rejection. Return to sender. It should be something that you do not accept. Positive things, accept. Negative things, reject. You'll see a total difference in your life because there's going to be some things that's negative because you're experiencing life that's going to be coming through. And again, a lot of people, I deal with negativity. If somebody's telling you they're not dealing with it, they might, I don't know, they might be, you know, maybe they don't want to talk about it or something, or they're not being real truthful. But a lot of people deal with this negative stuff. And all we got to is we all have to reject it in some kind of way. And if you do it enough times, you get better at it, like anything else. And you stay more positive because that negative stuff won't even come up all the time. It'll start coming up, maybe once a month or once a year or something like that if you stay constant on it. But you got to repeatedly build yourself up with positive affirmations and confirmations, right? And so, one other thing I'm gonna say is that using children as emotional partners. You was a child, and your parent used you as an emotional partner, um, and what it does is parentifies the kid. It makes a child feel like they're older than they're supposed to be because they're being exposed to things that only really adults should be talking about. Because a child's mind is so impressionable. And just remember that, there's a story in the Bible about planting seed. Jesus tells this story. And this is another thing I learned about life that I didn't think about. I heard a lot of people preach about it, but I didn't really think about it. So when that story happened, it was a story about planting seed and on the different grounds, right? And it was one ground that when you planted it, something's going to grow. That was that good soil. So we're not going to talk about the other soils. We're going to talk about that good soil. So when in life does a person have very good soil to plant in? That is when you're young. Your heart is so good and so impressionable that anything in the environment that you're around, it's going to get planted, whether you like it or not. And there's going to be things that grow from that, out of that plantation. So, and the seed is a word. It could be a word from God. It could be a word from, the environment, the people you're around. Any words or anything that's going on around you is getting planted in you as a child. And when you get older, these things start growing. And whether it's good or bad, you don't know what to do with it. All you know is that it's there and it's growing. And you're trying to deal with what's growing that you didn't have a control over planting in the first place. So all these things that I'm talking about that make you feel unclean is things that's been planted in you, especially when you had a good heart, when you felt good about yourself, when you had a good heart and it grew. And again, you've been in that household for 10, 15, all your life, 17 years. And this plant has grown. Just think about any plant that you put a seed in that's been growing for 17 years. It's a pretty big plant. So if you're going through something, you can't just like cut off little limbs and stuff. You got to destroy that whole tree, pull it up by the roots, take it up out of the ground in order to heal from it. So as an adult, it's not as an adult, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility, if that makes sense. Nothing you've been through is not your fault, but it's your responsibility to take care of it. Even though that you was around certain people and it wasn't your fault that you was around them, it's still your responsibility to pull those roots up. Because again, sometimes we try to knick-knack at the tree. That's a bad tree that's grown. And it keeps growing. And it keeps growing and we wonder why we can't get rid of it. That's because we haven't went to the root of the problem and pulled it up by the roots. So the thing I'm talking about is how scripture can help you deal with being unclean. Because in some way, somehow, you came in contact with a dead person. And again, a dead person is somebody with the lack of wise and moral conduct. It's a person who's not making right choices and not wise choices, and their behaviors are not wise. But in some way, you was connected with that. And even though maybe not by physical touch, but by spiritual touch. And so these things can have an effect on you. In the Bible, right, when we're touching on, when touching a dead body or other forms of uncleanness, there was a ritual that was required up under the law of Moses. And so we're going to go to Numbers chapter 19. That is Numbers chapter 19. And I'm going to read verses 11 through 13. I'm going to read verses 11 through 13. And this is about being unclean and touching a dead person, touching or being involved with somebody with the lack of wise and moral conduct. And again, so this is Numbers chapter 19, verses 11 and 13. And it says here that he who touches the dead body of anyone shall be unclean for 7 days. Now, let's think about that. Let's just don't read past that, right? So, he who touches, meaning come in contact with, whether physically or spiritually, come in contact with a dead body. Now, I'm going to say a dead body is a dead person or a person that has a lack of wise and moral conduct, shall be unclean for 7 days. Now, I'm just saying this, let's do the math. Let's say As a child, you was around somebody and you was affected, right? Let's say that one contact was for 7 days, but you've been in this household since you was a child, and now you're not a child anymore. You're an adult or you're a teenager. You're 17, 16, 18, 19 in this house. How many times have you been in contact with that? And how many days, if you add 7 on there, that's a lot of uncleanness days if you add them over the years. And that can tell you maybe the how important, or the it might show you a vision, if you've really been involved in something like that, why this is such a weigh down on you. Because if you touch it one time, you're unclean for 7 days. But if you're in an active environment of it, you're being touched multiple times a day, multiple times, a week. And if you add those 7 days and you haven't cleansed yourself because one, you didn't know you had to, you can just see how this is such a big weight on you. And that's understandable. I want to let you know that I understand that, because anybody who doesn't know that they need to be cleansed or need to be loved or cherished or, positive words spoke into, it can be heavy. And when you become an adult and you don't understand that you have all this spiritual dirt on you, but you're just trying to lift this and carry this through life, because one, you haven't took time to stop to cleanse yourself because you don't know. We're always taught that if every day you got to bathe or wash. Some people bathe once, or some people bathe twice, or some people might be bathed more than once or twice a day, just so their bodies to be cleansed. Just imagine if you haven't cleansed your spirit at all, and that you just been dealing with this whole time. You can feel some kind of way at the end. So he who touches the dead body of anyone, any person, anyone, it don't matter who it is. Again, this could be childhood, this could be a teenage, this could be adulthood. But anybody can have a lack of moral conduct in this life that we live in. And we all somehow, some way, have been in contact with somebody who has a lack of wise and moral conduct. That's just the way it's set up. We all of us have been unclean in some kind of way. It's just that, again, sometimes we don't get a chance to confess it. One, we don't confess it within ourselves so that we can acknowledge it and deal with the pain behind it. And two, we don't confess it around others because we don't want to be, looked at different. And again, that's the devil, or the opposition against you, because your flesh knows that if you release it, you're going to get some kind of relief. You're going to feel better. So sometimes the things that we're supposed to be able to do, we can't do because our flesh is making us feel that if we do it, it's going to be something wrong about it. But really, if we did it, it'll relieve you from all the things that you're being hurt about. And so what we do is, since we feel like we're going to be judged if we speak, we keep it in. But again, it's best if you confess. Confess with your mouth, right? And so if we go to verse 12, it says, he shall purify himself with water. Now, and here it says with water. In Scripture, it does talk about, in the New Testament, how we need to be cleansing, right? It says that it talks about this when it deals with wives, right? This is one thing that I found that really helped me as a man in my relationship. It says, something about love your wife like Christ loved the church, right? That he gave himself for it, and about continually washing, her with the words out of your mouth, cleansing her, looking at her without spot nor wrinkle. And that's how we have to view ourselves. We have to constantly cleanse ourselves. The spirit cleansing the body, right? The spiritual side, the godly side, which is the groom, cleansing the fleshly side, or the bodily side, which is the bride, and constantly cleansing it, looking at ourselves as without spot, free. And again, here it says, he shall purify himself. This doesn't talk about somebody else purifying you. This is, again, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. And we have to take that. He shall purify himself with water on the third day and on the seventh day. But what about if you never knew that you had to cleanse yourself? And then cleansing yourself with what? You know, again, it has to be words. It has to be something spoken in you. Cleansing yourself, looking at and accepting yourself as spot free. And that can be hard, especially dealing with certain things we deal with in life. We might not even see ourselves as spot free. We might be judging ourselves all day long. But this is something that you have to do. It says, he shall purify himself or herself. Whoever that individual is, you have to purify yourself. Nobody else can do it for you. And that's why sometimes you might try to get in relationships and thinking that that person is going to do something to you to make you feel better about yourself. But this is something that you have to do for self. It's something that somebody else can't do. And that's what makes it hard, because it's a job and it's something that we have to do for ourselves, and it can be difficult. I'm not saying none of this stuff I'm saying is easy to do. But what I'm saying is that you have to do it. And the more you do it, the better and the easier it will be. And so he shall purify himself with water on the third and on the seventh day. Then he will be clean. See, you feel dirty, but you have to purify yourself. So scripture does give us a good example that if you have touched a dead person, if you have been in contact with somebody who has been, their conduct has been unwise, if you've been in contact with somebody who has a lack of wise and moral conduct, you have to purify yourself. But as children, we don't know how to purify ourselves. As children, we kind of accept everything as time goes on. But as an adult, you have to find ways to purify yourself, to make yourself think positively about who you are as a person. And I want to say that everybody on here, you have the capabilities within you. God has created within you the ability to make yourself feel accepted. No matter what the world or what other people in the world have said to you, you are created as a human being to have the utilities within you, inside of you, to make you and help you to make yourself feel accepted. Because life has made you feel sometimes maybe rejected. But you have the tools. Because other than that, the Bible wouldn't tell you to do that, to purify yourself. And here it's just talking about water so you can have a visual concept, that you have to cleanse and wash yourself. But it says but in contrast, right? But when you hear but in a scripture, now we're gonna shift, right? One is purify yourself. That's the one responsibility you have. We all have different ways of purifying ourselves, or we come up with different ways. But at the end of the day, it's all about positive confirmation, right? But it says, but in contrast, if he does not purify himself. We're also in Numbers chapter 19, reading verses 11 through 13, and I'm on 12 now, but we're dealing with the contrast part in 12. But in contrast, if he does not purify himself, let's say you don't purify yourself. Let's say you choose not to do this work. And again, it's work. It's not easy. If you choose not to do this work, it says on the third and the seventh day, he will not be clean. The reason why you are still feeling the way you are now is because you didn't know, or somebody didn't tell you, that it is your responsibility to purify yourself, to make you be clean again. Other people told you that you got to go to this building, that organization, this place over here, and if you go there and if you do a certain thing, you'll be cleansed. This is a personal responsibility. Only you have the power that God gave you to make you cleanse yourself. And again, it's all about confession. It's all about dealing with the things that go bump in your soul at night, the things that trigger you, the things that have affected you in life. Only you know all these things because you experienced them. Only you know what's going on with inside of you. Everybody doesn't know everything that's going on inside of you, but you do. You had the experience. You know what's going on. You know how the weight of this world and the things that have happened to you are weighing you down. And so Numbers chapter 19, verse 11 and 13 helped me because when I viewed it that way, I knew that it was my responsibility. And this whole time, that's my whole life, I was looking for other people to bring to cleanse me and make me feel less. I didn't know I had to be cleansed. I just was hoping that somebody would make me feel better about myself. Somebody out there. And so I was out there trying to figure this out, not knowing that it was closer than I thought. My healing was closer than I imagined because it starts with me and it's going to start with you. And the beauty about all this is that you're going to be able to help somebody else. Once you figure out how this works within you and you experience that healing, that cleansing, that feeling accepted, now you're going to be able to help somebody else. And that's why you got to do it yourself. It's like anything. Like, I mean, if you have a job, right? And let's say you're teaching people how to do your job. You got to know how to do your job first. You got to know how to, how this goes and that goes for you to be a teacher to anybody. But you're the one that taught yourself how to do the job that you're doing. And so you got to teach yourself how to love you. You got to teach yourself how to respect you. You got to teach yourself how to be spoken to because certain people want to talk to you a certain kind of way. But if you don't speak to yourself in a positive and an affirmational way, then nobody else is going to probably do it. And when they do it, you're going to think, well, since you've been around it all your life and you feel unclean anyway, that, hey, maybe that's just how people speak to me, or maybe I should accept this. But really, again, you have the power. And I just want you to know that. All this is really, again, this is my first time live. If I'm doing anything wrong, hey, I'm sorry. Charge it, don't charge it to my heart, charge it to the game. I'm just speaking. Hopefully that what I'm saying might reach a couple people, to let people know that, hey, you're not alone out here. The things that you're going through and that you're feeling, the Bible does speak about it. It just depends on how you interpret it. Sometimes, that's why a lot of theological stuff, if you do listen to me or if you do have seen any of my videos, I'm not very theological because I think that's kind of messed people up because people are looking at the Bible in a certain way. And sometimes that way is not beneficial. It's just not. And the way they look at it, it's not really building people up. And I'm in the business of wanting to build people up. I don't want to tear anybody down. If anything, if I can help somebody by showing you, hey, you might feel unclean. And these are the reasons why you might feel unclean. And the Bible is really giving an example on how you can be healed from this feeling unclean and being unclean. Maybe, if I say something, it might help somebody. Let's go to verse 13. Again, we're in Numbers chapter 19, verses 11, and I'm going to read verse 13. Verse 13 says, whoever touches the body of anyone who has died. That means that anybody that's not dead now, but anybody who has experienced death, if you have touched or come in contact. So really, when you come in contact with anybody, you need to be cleansing yourself. You need to be reaffirming yourself of who you are as a person. You need to be loving yourself no matter who you come in contact with, because everybody's been dead. Everybody has acted, with a lack of wise and moral conduct. And so when you come in contact with anybody, basically, you gotta, hey, you need to be cleansed again so you can feel a certain way. And again, if you're not cleansed in a certain way, and there's other stuff I can go into. I mean, even sacrifices, right? I don't know if y'all know about sacrifices, but in the Bible, they used to have animal sacrifices to purify people for sins and things like that. The animal, what did the animal have to be? Spot free. And if we're living sacrifices, we have to be spot free. But we have to, it's our responsibility, according to Leviticus, to purify ourselves to make us spot free. So if all this stuff is like again, I look at it as a metaphor that even in the Old Testament, they knew that whatever they was putting on the altar had to be spot free before they put it on the altar. If not, it angered God. So let's say you as the living sacrifice, if you think that you're dirty, that you're not spot free, and you're trying to put yourself on the altar before God, that's why you feel some kind of way. Because it's really how you feel about you. It's really about not knowing that things in life have made you feel unclean because you've been around people who had a lack of wise and moral conduct, and you did not know and understand that it's your job to purify yourself. And again, we purify ourselves with, with positive affirmations and things like that to think about. And again, it might sound weird. Like, how can I do that? I think positive sometimes, but this is a continuation. You have to always do this. This is not something that you do part-time. This is a full-time job. You cleansing yourself is a full-time job because we have bad thoughts that we come in contact with, so we got to be cleansed. We come in contact with people that, that act and behave a certain way, so we got to be cleansed. And this is saying that whoever touches the body of anyone who has in the past been dead. And it says this, and does not purify himself. Now look at this. If you choose not to do this yourself, it says whoever touches the dead body of anyone who has died in the past and does not. Let's say again, as children, we don't know, so we're not doing it. And so now you might understand what's going on, why you still feel unclean because you haven't done it. Not your fault, your responsibility, right? And does not purify himself, defiles the tabernacle of the Lord. Think about that. If you choose not to do it, it says that you defile the tabernacle. We are the temple of the living God. This is the tabernacle that the Spirit dwells in. And if you choose not to cleanse yourself, if you choose not to do it, now you wonder why you might feel defiled a little bit in your body, in your temple. And again, this is just giving an explanation. This might not be the truth for you, but it could be. And this was written years ago. And that's why they say that God had to have some kind of, involvement in it, because spiritually we can use this today. Because I always wondered myself, why did I feel defiled? I haven't been in the world long enough. Back then, not knowing that I was unclean, and it was because of the people that I was involved with. What in the world? And it was the things that I was involved with in this life. And so again, I don't really know how this live thing goes. Something just went across my screen of inactivity, so I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing on here or anything like that. But I will probably learn this if I keep dealing with this. And so we'll see how this goes. But what I am saying is that if you don't cleanse yourself, if you don't purify yourself, you're going to defile the tabernacle. And so it says that that person shall be cut off from Israel. So if you feel separated from God in any kind of way, it's very easy to get reconnected, purifying yourself. But if you don't, you're going to feel separated or cut off. And so, again, these scriptures, the phrasing of them, it really helps out with the spiritual sense of life. And so it at least helped me with my spiritual sense of life. And so it says, that person shall be cut off from Israel. He shall be unclean because the water of purification was not sprinkled on him. You chose not to purify yourself, and his uncleanness is still on him. Now, it says uncleanness is today, is his present tense, is still on him. And so I really don't know how this is going. I might finna end this here in a second because I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. But I did want to encourage somebody today that if you do feel unclean, if you feel like your tabernacle is defiled or your body is defiled, it's not your fault, but it is your problem that you have to purify yourself. You have to cleanse yourself. And so, knowing that, please take that responsibility to do so. And so, until next time, again, I don't know how this played out. Maybe if y'all can let me know, I'll know. And if so, I'll do another one. I'll come back on and I'll speak again if I helped anybody, if anybody wants me to continue. If you have scriptures that you have, want to know more about, let me know. I'll study those scriptures and we can talk about it. I can come on live and I can speak about those scriptures. Me, I'm just trying to help out the best way I know how. Right now I'm fishing. Again, I haven't never done a live before. I don't know what this is all about. And so I'm trying something new. And so I thank y'all for listening. Thank you for, understanding. And again, if I can help out, let me know again, scriptures, anything like that. And so other than that, y'all have a blessed and wonderful day.